All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Frank Finance, where you can get your honest financial information and your questions answered. You've probably heard recently about a lot of swirl of interest rates dropping and doing a refinance on your personal mortgage. Now, this is one of the best things that you can do to guarantee savings to your net worth. And for myself, it saved me nearly $60,000. Hopefully, this video will help you think through, does it make sense for you to do a refinance, or at least start the conversation and see if it makes sense. All right, so step one is to find a lender and understand your options of this three-step process. So what I mean by that is find a lender that you feel comfortable with and you can work multiple estimates with, and you feel like they'll be able to email you pretty smoothly. In this COVID era, we don't do a ton of in-person meetings. So understanding and feeling comfortable with someone over the phone and knowing that they'll get back to you is so important. I personally didn't do a lot of shopping around because I enjoy working with US Bank, and that's who I worked with. And so I never really shopped around because the rates were pretty much cut and dry and there wasn't a ton of variances working with other banks. But if you feel comfortable shopping around, just note that as soon as you do one, call it pre-application, it's going to be a credit hit. And so once you get going, just remember that there is a small ding on your credit once you do this application. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you comfortable with where the loan is today? Do you want to just change the terms from a 30-year to a 15 to a 10? You know that you're going to get a more favorable rate. This is more than likely why you're refinancing. And the last question you have to ask yourself is, are you doing a cash out refinance? And what I mean by that is, let's use an example. If you've got a house worth $200,000 and you've paid down to $100,000. That's all you've got left. The bank is allowed to loan up to 80% of the value of the house, which would be $160,000. So you might go back to the bank and say, hey, I want to refinance my house. I need $60,000 in cash right now for maybe a business deal or something. This would be an option for you to go get cash out of your house. I would highly recommend this option to stay out of your realm if you are just doing this for personal reasons. A cash out refinance is more for business deals, not for personal options. A prime example of this is in 2008 when the housing market bubble crashed. So many people did cash out refinances, and then they had this massive loan on a house that wasn't worth the value of what they did. So if you do a cash out refinance, you run the risk, if the market crashes, that you're stuck with a loan for a very long time. So you better be comfortable living there if you do a cash out refinance. So you found your lender, you're going to start working up estimates. So during this time, you're going to have a lender you feel comfortable with emailing you different options on a 30-year, a 15-year, a 10-year, and what rates that they have currently as we speak. Now, these rates go up and down as the, call it 10-year treasury goes up and down. It's a good indicator. If you see the 10-year treasury go up, more than likely the rates will go up as well. If you see it go down, you'll also see the rate go down. So it's pretty hand in hand. And to give you an example, when I started 15-year refinance in the very beginning, it started at 2.75 and I got it all the way down to 2.5 by waiting. Because this was during the spike in that roughly March timeframe when the 10-year yield went pretty much almost to 2%. That was the time I almost refinanced, and you would have seen the rates hike tremendously. But since I was patient and waited, I was able to get a better rate. Now, points. This is where you would talk about, are you looking to buy down the rate? So let's say you go in for a 30-year and it's at 3%, and you're like, what would it cost me to go buy it down to 2.8 or 2.75? And they'll give you what it costs to buy down the percentage. This will save you over the long haul, but if you sell the house before the term ends, this will not save you money. So keep this in mind. Talk to them about the points and if it makes sense for you. Have your own Excel documents with amortization schedules that let you put in the value of the loan and lets you put in the terms, whether it's the percent, the 15-year, the 10-year, you name it, so that you can see how much this is actually saving you. And by the way, in my Discord link below in #FinanceFiles, you'll be able to go out there and play with my document that basically will allow you to check this out and see if it makes sense for you and see how it flows. And I'll show you that a little bit later here towards the end. I'll show the actual numbers that I went through myself. Now, they can start estimating the closing costs. You're going to have a couple components of your closing costs. You've got the fixed component, which is like the application fee, the appraisal, the origination, taxes, title company. Same thing as when you went through closing to buy your first home. The only thing is you don't have to pay the realtor 6% to buy the house. They're going to walk you through how much of that's prepay, how much of that is fixed, and then also there's a variable component of it. And then also make sure you ask them if there's any discounts to save money during this refinance. So for an example, with US Bank, because I'm a current first-time home buyer with them and I have my mortgage with them, I'm getting 0.25% of my loan as a discount. It was a nice $500 in savings for myself. So make sure you ask the bank that you're working with if there's any savings for that. And by the way, I will show you some documents here in a short while of what all the closing costs look like so you can really see it, so stay with me. And then once you've worked up estimates and you're ready to go and finish the process, this is where you now tell the bank to send over the application, or you go on their website to fill it out. You fill out the application, you might have an application fee to fill this out. Then what's going to happen is they're going to, within a certain amount of days, they're going to send out an appraiser if they need to. I was lucky. I never had to have an appraiser come out because the value of my house was well above that 80% that I was referencing earlier, so I don't have to worry about them appraising it. And so that was a nice $500 in savings. Then what they're going to do is during the same process, this is all going to happen together, and it's about a 15 to 30 day window when all this happens. They're going to have you submit tax documents, your income, your pay stubs, bank reconciliations. Very smooth process though. I signed online and it was very easy to upload it all, very quick, especially if you have things like TurboTax where you just download your files and just upload them really quickly. Or you have a larger bank, you can actually just sign in there and they pull the documents down for you. It was so slick and easy, very painless. And then ultimately, once things start processing, you'll go out there and sign disclosures. If you're working with US Bank, it's all online. Again, very easy. I never showed up once. The actual final closing documents, they sent the title company and a notary out to my house to sign the documents. So I had to do nothing basically in terms of going and showing up. It was so slick. And then the final thing is when you're closing, if you owe money, then you'll ultimately have to pay at closing. Things you'll probably pay up front are going to be your appraisal, and you might have to pay your application. Those might be paid before closing. And then if you rope in your closing costs and your prepaids into your new mortgage, you might actually get cash back like I did. So I ended up getting cash back during my refinance. So this is the type of things to think through as you're going through a refinance. So now let's get into real numbers and let's talk about what I went through myself. All right, so here's the personal walkthrough of my own loan. So here's what I built up when I walked through. Does it make sense for me to do my closing? So basically what I ended up doing was the walk of the old loan value plus my May payments plus the interest that I was talking about earlier, where you have to pay the beginning of the month up to the closing date. So I had, call it 15 days worth of interest I had to pay at the old balance. That got me to my ending loan value. That was what would have been required to pay off my other loan. Then talking about the closing costs. So the closing costs, as I mentioned, the origination fee, the application fee, and you can see those right here. This is an example of my closing document here. So you could see the origination costs, there's about $780, $770, that's fixed. The service borrower expense, that's another $370, that's fixed. The taxes I would have to pay right here, that is fixed. The escrow, this part is going to get netted in a second with my current escrow. So I'll just jump to that quick. You can see here as I highlight the total closing costs of the prepaids, those will net each other out. And so I actually only had to pay a certain amount over what the rate was here. It was a little bit higher than where my current escrow was, and that was because I was a little lower in my escrow payments as a result of what they had set up. So I had to bump that up a little bit. Then there's the prepay of now the remaining 14 days of the month to get to the end of May at the new loan rate, at the new percent. That was what you also have to pay at closing. And then the fun things you got to deduct. So then I had the lender credit of $433, so just shy of $500 like I mentioned. I had the application that I already paid. And then the escrow gets the net against that. So basically what I was doing here was adding $1,500 to my current loan, so that if I do my walk, basically I ended up getting a cash back right around $600 in order for me to have this new loan at 171.5. Now, some things to keep in mind. They cannot give you more than $1,000 cash back. So my original loan was for 173, and based on everything that happened for the better, I didn't need that much of a loan. It would have required a cash out refinance basically, and that's not what we were doing. So basically, we had to readjust the loan back down and readjust the documents. So this is kind of the walk that I went through. And then what I want to show you here is this is basically now the old versus the new. So this is how I ended up saving $60,000. The old loan would have cost me $128,000 in interest, plus the loan of $185,000, meaning the cost of owning this house would have been $313,000 over the 30 years. Now, the new loan, I already had sunk interest of $32,000. I'm never going to get that back again. My new loan for 15 years is worth $35,000 in interest, meaning I will only pay $66,000 in interest now over the life of this house. I have to add in the closing costs of about $2,500 to net me to $253,000. That's what it costs now for me to own it. It saves me $60,000 over my lifetime. I do not plan to sell this house. So for me, I'm going to pay an extra $280 a month, and I will save $60,000. So for me, this is not instant. You don't save this overnight. It takes time, but by lowering the rate and changing the terms, it actually netted me better. Now, a little secret here, to be honest with you, this is a little clickbait, because for you finance people out there, you're going to say, well, what if you just took the extra $283 and applied it against your current mortgage? Well, first and foremost, if I had the discipline to do that, I would have already started doing it, which I didn't. And so for those of us that want it to just be automatic, this made sense. But if, let's say I was very due diligent about this and I could always put these extra amounts against my mortgage, well, I still would have saved $30,000. I went into my amortization schedules and I added the extra $280 a month. It would have still paid off in 15 years. But the difference is, during those 15 years, I was paying 4% interest versus 2.5%. So that difference of 1.5% yielded me about $30,000 net if I were to be diligent with the 283. So for me, this made the most sense to do this. It helped build our family net worth up. It is going to help us for the future. Hopefully all this was informational for yourself. This is my real life experience. Take it with a grain of salt. Go through the process yourself. See if it makes sense for you. Because refinancing your house is going to be one of the fastest net worth gains that I will ever have in the next 10 years. At $60,000 to blink my eye and change a couple documents and have to put nothing down, I'll do this all day over and over and over again. If you're still with me, stay tuned. Jump into the Twitch chat Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Central, where we're going to talk about things like this, stock reviews, and so much more. Hopefully you enjoyed this and have a great rest of your night. Bye, everyone.